This plant looks fantastic and I've really enjoyed the way it's grown, and it's filled in this entire corner. This is Java Fern, Windelov, or Crested Java Fern, and it is just beautiful. But unfortunately, as things do grow in an aquarium, at some point it becomes fully grown. And when it's fully grown, it normally means something has to change. Either get trimming, or in this case, this big ball of Java Fern, I'm going to cut it into a number of smaller pieces that are going to be sold. Now, the thing that I'm wondering about is when you look at this particular big ball of Java Fern, it's taken about 2 years to grow from a small piece on a rock into this very large piece that takes up an entire corner. Now, there are fish that go in there and lay eggs all the time. The emperor tetras have just spawned hundreds and hundreds of times over the last 2 years in all this Java Fern, both on the back wall of the aquarium and also in this big ball in the corner. But it's fully grown, and now I'm going to take it apart and find out how many smaller individual plants I can take from just this one big ball. I'm going to reach down into the tank and take this whole plant out as one big clump. Java Ferns are often known as one of the very best aquarium plants you could have. Very, very easy to grow. They'll grow in low lighting and a whole range of different water conditions. They have a range of different varieties, from very tall, large-leafed types to very small, thin, narrow-leafed types to this one here, which is the Crested Java Fern variety, which is ideal for the foreground and midground of an aquarium. And there's the little rock that the Java Fern was glued onto, and this corner is now really empty. Now, it's really hard to show the scale or the size of this clump. This is a monster piece of plant, and what I'm going to do is see just how many individual cuttings I can take to see how many individual plants I can get from this big mass. That does look completely different. Now, when you take big areas of plants out of a tank, you got to be very, very careful, because there will be lots of little things still hiding in that plant. And right this minute, I've just found a little Endler, little Endler baby that has just swum out of this plant. I've given it a few shakes now and a few dips back in the water. I think that's all the fish that are now out of it. All the different varieties of Java Ferns are types of epiphytes. That is, they don't actually grow in the soil, they grow on top of things. So typically they will grow on top of wood or on top of rocks, and they have what's called an adventurous rootstock called a rhizome. And from that thick woody stem comes out new leaves. And as that root stem stretches out and grows longer, you get more and more leaves until there's an enormous colony of interconnected plants. Okay, so what was once a big clump of plant is now a whole lot of individual smaller plants. And I'll just sort it out and have a look and count what we have. As I sort through these plants that have got their own individual roots and perhaps they've got half a dozen leaves on each rhizome, I'm also finding there are some little leaves which, whilst not a plant on their own right now, the way these ferns grow from spores in the tips of the leaves, I'm not going to throw this away. I'll take the old piece of leaf at the bottom off, so that I will throw away. But when it comes to the little piece that was at the end of it, I'll put that back into my aquarium, and not a plant right now, but this will become a plant in about another month or two from now. So back that goes into the water to form another new plant. I tend to have quite a few of these little leaflets floating in my aquarium, and over the course of 1 to 2 months it'll develop new roots, it'll develop new leaves, and once it's big enough I'll either use it to stick it onto a piece of wood or a rock, or as it gets larger I will sell it on eBay. That is a much more empty looking tank, which I'll rearrange. I'll put some smaller plants back in the front where the wood and the rocks are, and it'll be looking not too bad. Okay, I've sorted through this clump into a series of smaller individual plantlets that I can sell separately, and I've got 31 little plants that I can sell at $5 each, which is $155 of Java Fern Windelov, which grew from one plant 2 years ago into this clump. I've now separated into 31 separate pieces. But more than that, I've also got a whole lot of pieces which are too small for individual sale, but they are going to grow into more new plants for me for later. And that includes little pieces of rhizome, and that little piece of rhizome will sprout new leaves, go again as a new plant. Another piece of rhizome here, a single leaf with a single root here, too small to sell. But even these little leaves like this is the start of a new plant, and it is tiny right now, but give it 3-4 months, it'll be a new plant that I can sell or keep. So even the scraps that are too small to sell will grow back into new plants, which makes this particular plant, Java Fern, and the Windelov, the fancy Crested Java Fern, such a great plant to grow in your aquarium. Very hardy, very easy to grow, is a slow grower, but yet it does, when it gets going, can double within a number of weeks. What I'll do now is that I'll take some of the smaller plants that I'm not going to be selling, and I'll put them onto some wood and rocks in this corner. I'll glue those on, and I will show you what it looks like in a moment. You can actually see on the wood in particular, there's a few whitish looking spots, and that is where I did have some super glue with some of the Java Fern on before. And as you use super glue in an aquarium, you will find it is going to turn white, but normally the plant will cover it and you don't get to see it. Now, C. Andrew Nelson had a live stream, the worst live stream ever, which I'll leave a link to, you can see down here, but it was talking about hardscapes, and one of the rocks that we use here in Australia quite regularly is what we call nullarbor rock. This is a lava rock which often has lots of holes, nooks, crevices and interesting shapes, so that you can get all kinds of different aquascapes with arches and caves, and make some really interesting designs in an aquarium. This rock is totally inert and doesn't affect the water chemistry in any way. But I've got quite a few rocks I don't tend to use, because as much as I like the look of them, when you have a smaller aquarium or even a medium-sized aquarium like I do, rocks which are as large as this, they displace their weight in water. So if it's a 2 or 3 kilo rock, or 5 kilos or more, it displaces litres and litres of water out of your aquarium, so you have far less water volume than what you thought you had in that size tank. So as much as I like the look of certain large rocks, I tend to not often use them. I tend to go more for just all life plants and more life plants, because I'm not displacing and losing as much water capacity in my tanks. What I have done with some of the nullarbor rocks that I had is I've put some safety goggles on, I've put the rock under a towel, and I've hit those lumps of rock with a hammer, and I've been able to make a lot of smaller little chunks of rock which are going to be used to glue my new pieces of Java Fern. Now we take one of our small rocks and one of our small plants and our super glue, and we put them together. And this little rock and plant goes back into the tank and starts a whole new colony, a whole new clump all over again. There I've taken 6 small plants and glued them onto 6 small stones. They'll go back into that corner and they will then begin to grow and become all nice and bushy all over again. So now I'll sort out the plants I've sold, and the ones that I'm yet to sell I'll have floating in the tank, and in a few weeks they'll be gone too. And the little pieces that are not a big plant yet, they'll float and grow bigger and then join the larger plants very soon. And that's the after, with the little plants put back in the corner where the huge plant came out. Now it doesn't look particularly good now, but over the course of a month or so that will become another attractive looking group of Java Fern. Until we find these plants a new home, I'll just float them on top of the water and the fish can just play in them. So from one big clump of Java Fern, I ended up with 32 individual smaller plants. One thing is for sure, the fish will have a lot of fun playing hide and seek in that. It looks a bit odd right now, but in a week or two it will actually look quite attractive. Just a matter of time, and this will fill in and become another pretty amazing clump.